This is JavaScript and web standards sitting in a tree. And I am Jenn Lukas. And when I'm not busy fighting pirates, I am a lead developer for this company called HappyCog. And I mainly focus in front-end development, but I also do some CMS builds, as well as I'm involved in the information architecture process, as well as some design reviews. I also blog about kittens and front-end development sporadically at jennlukas.com. Some of you may remember me from last year. I got up here for a few seconds and was like, let's get more women in JavaScript. And I think we have some more this year, which is awesome. So way to go, ladies. So as I was saying, I work for a company called HappyCog. Show of hands, have you guys read the book Designing with Web Standards? A few, yeah. Show of hands, how many people like audience participation? Yeah, all right, cool. We do a web standards-based design and development, and we have 3 offices. I work out of the Philadelphia office. And we also put on an event apart, which is a conference that corresponds with alistapart.com, and that's an online periodical for people who make websites. So it's everything from IA to design to JavaScript, and it's a really cool resource. Here are some of the clients that we do some work for in the standard-based design. I'm actually in DC quite a bit lately because 2 of our current clients are the Holocaust Museum in Georgetown. Quite a lovely city you guys got here. So you all know JavaScript, but let's take a step back and talk about one definition of web standards. And this definition is from the Web Standards Project. And the idea here is that the W3C has created a set of standards or guidelines that are designed to provide the greatest benefit to the greatest number of users. And for this presentation, I'm going to explore some more about web standards and where they're applicable to JavaScript use. And I'm going to take you through some of our common practices that we use at HappyCog. And hopefully some of it will be applicable, some may not be, but I'm going to go through a bunch. So the first one, and it's a big one, and your site should work without JavaScript. And I'm going to take a look through some popular sites right now and sort of emphasize what I mean by work. So you'll recognize this site. It's YouTube. And I'm signing in right now, and I don't have JavaScript enabled. But just because I have JavaScript disabled doesn't mean I don't enjoy a good, funny video now and then. So I log in, and they've got some stuff over here, like stuff that's recommended for me, and but I want to get to my favorites. But as you can see, I'm clicking on my name to get to my favorites, but nothing's happening. Like, it's just broken. And so I'm going to scroll down the page, because maybe there's another way to get there, because I'm really looking for this one video. Now, I've happened to explore this site, and I know it's not under recommended for you, but there's a backwards way to get to my favorites, and that's actually through personal messages. Not exactly sure why. But you come to your message, and there's a link on the far left that says videos. All right, I click on videos. Now, finally, I see a link for favorites, all the way buried under someplace I would never find since I can't access it from the home page. So there it is. I found what I was looking for. I want to eat green berets for breakfast, and I want to hear Arnold Schwarzenegger. But nothing's there, and I can't watch my video, and I'm like, this is a bummer. So I want to find out about why this isn't happening. So I'm going to go to a site called about.com. Maybe about.com will tell me what's happening, because they're going to give me guidance and not guesswork. So maybe Arnold's in one of their channels. All right, I'm clicking, nothing's happening. Maybe he's a topic. Arnold's hot, maybe he's in there. Not so much. These arrows, nothing's happening, and I'm not getting any response to tell me why something isn't happening. So now I'm left with a choice of Getting Fit, no thanks, or Tiger Woods. And neither one of those is exactly the jingle all the way quotes that I wanted. All right, so I give up. I'm not going to laugh at Arnold. But I'm going to read about some technology. So I go over to CNET because I want to review something, and this is with JavaScript enabled, and everything looks good. I turn off JavaScript. Ouch. There is something definitely broken. I don't need to click on anything. I know right away something's broken. I guess the good news is I can't read that whole big section. I can read clearly the part up top, and now I know that Anna Paquin's bisexual. So I guess there's some sort of win going on here, and I learned something, but it wasn't what I came to this site to find out. If you take a look, you'll see that they have 5 divs that are all absolutely positioned over each other, and that's fine if you've got JavaScript and you handle it there, but they're not styling these for people without JavaScript. Let's take a look at where we are right now, and this is the Kimpton Hotel site. Great site, awesome hotels. Now, they at least give me an error message, but the error message is telling me I need Flash Player 9 or higher. I've got that. I just don't have JavaScript on. So I'm still like, you know what, I know the hotel's cool, I'm gonna make a reservation. Or I can see some pictures, like, oh, they've got cocktails, I'm in. You know, I'm sold, I'm ready. You know, that's kind of all I need. Kind of all I need. So I'm gonna make a reservation. So I come on over to the reservation page, and I'm clicking, and nothing's happening. I'm pretty sure that you don't need JavaScript to submit this kind of form. Just a wild guess, you know, dabbling a little bit, pretty sure you can do that. And here's what I get when I do. One last site to look at, and this is how you get into the Nike site. And they have a language option here for switch, and that's cool. And once you get into this, there's a lot of neat functionality on this site. If you come to this site without JavaScript, you get this. I guess I don't want to wear their sneakers if I don't have JavaScript enabled. So why? You know, why do you need to make sure your sites work without it? And you know, not everyone's coming to your sites. Like maybe you have a lot of users that do have JavaScript on it, or functionality, the little bits that are missing aren't that big of a deal. Well, show of hands. How many people here test their sites in Safari? Good number. How about Opera? And I know this was brought up earlier, but I want to take a look exactly at the stats. Safari is at 3.7% of users, and Opera is a whopping 2.2%. And they're both great browsers, but not that many people use them. And then you look at JavaScript, and the stats on here are 5% off. And even higher at some places, I've seen 6 to 10%. Now, if you have 100 visitors a month and 6 users don't have JavaScript, maybe it doesn't matter. But if you have 100,000 and 6,000 people aren't getting your functionality, if you're this hotel and 6,000 people can't book your site at $200 a day, you're losing out on a lot of money. So I know what you're thinking. Statistics. I don't really buy them either. Give me some, you know, real world case. So a show of hands again. How many people in this room are drivers? How many of you wear your seatbelts when you drive? Right? How many of you wear your seatbelts when you're only driving around the corner? And why? Because you still have some crazy neighbor a few blocks away who's not good at driving at all, right? You know, you never know. So what if the one person that's browsing your site without JavaScript is the president of the company that you're working for? You never know, and by doing this, you're being safe. So another reason that your site should work without JavaScript. Now, I've heard it before. It's your portfolio site. You can do whatever you want. You're going to use HTML5. You're going to use CSS3. It's not going to work in IE because you've shown me your Google Analytics, and no one's seeing your site in IE. They're all coming with 2,000 by 5,000 resolution, and everyone's using Chrome. OK. But what if I'm looking to hire you, and I'm coming to your portfolio site to see what kind of work you do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is view source. The second thing I'm going to do is resize text. And the third thing I'm going to do is disable JavaScript and test your site without JavaScript. If I want to pay you money to make sure my site looks good, I'm going to look at your site because that's a reflection of you. And that's telling me if you're going to work this hard to make sure your site works for yourself, you're going to pay me that same respect. Search engine optimization. SEO is like the brie of cheese. It's classy. Everyone wants it. You bring it up. People don't care what the rind is made of. They just want it. It's delicious. They want that SEO. People want to rank high on Google. It doesn't matter if someone's never seen a line of code. They want SEO. It's like people start foaming at the mouths when you start talking about search engine optimization. You can't count on search engines to run your JavaScript. So if you want to make sure that your content's getting indexed, you got to make sure that that content's in the page. OK, future-proofing. Making sure your site works without JavaScript now means it's going to work without it later. Technology is a really fickle thing. OK, hypothetical situation. Let's say you've got an application, and the application's some really neat video gallery photo switcher, and it's got kittens eating cupcakes deep fried in bacon, you know, and everyone's like, whoa, this is awesome. You know, your downloads are through the roof. People are like, hell yeah, kittens, bacon, I love all this shit. So people are downloading it, and they're like, this is awesome. And you're like, dude, we're going to rank in the money for years. They're going to give us one of those books. It's going to be in Urban Outfitters. It's going to be awesome. But then let's say there's this other company. And you know, it's a cool company. You respect them. And they come up with some sort of mobile device. I don't know. And for some reason, they decide that that mobile device isn't going to support JavaScript. Now I know, it's far-fetched. Probably won't happen, right? 5 years ago, not many Flash developers were saying that the future of Flash would be in question today. And I'm not saying that iPads and iPhones are the end-all be-all, but it's just something that if you're doing future-proofing, you're not have to worry about this as much. Let's not forget our good friend technology paranoia either. You know, in JavaScript prompts, they're pretty scary things. I was going through this with my sister yesterday outside while drinking Bloody Marys, and I met this geographer who was in town for a geography conference. And he asked what I was speaking about, and I was like, oh, I'm talking about JavaScript. And he was like, huh? Oh, that's the stuff that pops up and always makes me click OK. I hate that. JavaScript gets a bad rep. And I mean, not to people in this room, because we all know it, but there are a lot of people that don't care for it very much, you know? And security reasons are brought up before, that's why. You know, it's based on something, but people get scared. And that's why people are like downloading things like NoScript. Can you believe this? NoScript has 65 million downloads. Now, that's not 65 million users. I know multiple people downloads, but 65 million. In comparison, FlashBlock has 8 million. And people do this for a lot of reasons, whether it's security or whether they just want to speed up their sites to load faster. There's a chance that people will come to your site and not have it enabled. Sometimes people don't even know they're turning off JavaScript. If you're in Internet Explorer and you pop open the options and you pop over to the security tab, its default set is medium. Now, if I'm a user and I see it's at medium security, why aren't I going to pump that sucker up to high? Like, you know, give me all the security you got. I'm in. So I turn it up to high. Hell yeah, I'm secure. No one's worming me. I'm in. But little do I know that that's turning off the JavaScript functionality hidden within there. And not many people know to go to the Advanced tab and disable scripting. But this is just plain English saying, I want more security. Lastly, about why your site should work without JavaScript. If you're one of those sticklers just for guidelines, and you know I am, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines tell us we should. They emphasize here that content and functionality be accessible without scripting disabled, and that users have some other sort of way to access this information if they can't get it on that same page. Section 508 also goes on about requiring that scripting be made accessible. So there's the why, and let's get to the how. And that's our good friend progressive enhancement. Progressive enhancement is like the force of coding, of front-end coding. And of course, progressive enhancement is your XHTML layer plus your CSS layer plus your JavaScript layer. In other words, content, presentation, and behavior. Let's take a look at another quick example about some things that maybe could handle progressive enhancement a little bit better. So this is CNN, and this is CNN without JavaScript on. And we have all these social links at the top. You know, I can send it to Facebook, I can send it to Twitter, this stuff that everyone loves. I can email it. But when you have JavaScript disabled and you click on these again, nothing works. But they're still being printed to the page, so I still think I can have that functionality. Let's look at a tab set example. And I want to preface this by saying I love jQuery, but I am going to use this as an example. And this is from the jQuery UI. And this is their tab set, and it behaves as you would expect it to, where you click on the tabs and the other content shows. Now here's that same page with JavaScript disabled. Now at first bat, you're like, oh, well, all the content's there. That's awesome. I can still access all this content. Nothing's being hidden. But what we have here is an unordered list with 3 items, followed by 4 content paragraphs. Now, how do I know that the first link in that item list relates to the first paragraph here? Or how do I know that the second one to the second? And there's 3 links and 4 paragraphs. So I lose any sort of heading structure that tells me where my content comes from. This is a site that we did for a wide plank flooring company. And this is with JavaScript on. And you'll see in the bottom left of the photo, there's 4 little thumbnails, and you can switch the photo on the page. Now here's the site with no styles on. And this is just our content all laid out, so you can still get to all this content. Here's the site with JavaScript off. And you'll see the only really main difference is that those thumbnails go away, because you can't do that switching anymore. But we still have a link to get users to go to browse all floors, which is where they can see the photographs that they'd be able to see on the first page. Here's a detail page for that site. And customers can come here, look at the photo. They can read specs about the wood floor that they're looking at. They can see more floors like the one that they're currently searching for. They can print the page from that little print icon in that right corner. And they can also share, if they're so inclined, to email a friend. Now here's the same page without JavaScript on. And you'll see we still have the content, but the headings are now paired with the appropriate content that they were. So it's not a list at the top of the page anymore. We're taking it and making it be in the appropriate sections. We took away that print link because people now can't print from within this page. They'll have to use the browser's print. And if people want to email, they click, but we're doing it with page reloads now. And simply, we don't have that print link in the source, and we write it to the source with JavaScript. Another example, this is a site we did for the Philadelphia tourism company, and it's Visit Philly, and it just launched recently. And we actually have quite a few different tab set examples on this page. We have this What's New section, we have this Book Online section, and then we have a group of social tabs at the bottom. So this is it without JavaScript on. And we tackled these different tab sets in a few different ways. For the What's New section, because it's all pulling from different parts of the site, we didn't need to show everything here because there's ways for the users to still access the information. So if they click on hotels, they just go to the hotels page now instead of a tab switcher. We kept the Travelocity widget completely open because this is a business requirement for this client. This is how they're generating revenue, is from people booking through their site to come to Philadelphia. So we don't want to hide any functionality because, again, it'd be great if we can expect users to have JavaScript on. But when it comes down to it, making money is a big thing, and it's a big thing when it comes to your websites. And with the social tabs, we just show them all open. The other thing we do here is, if you'll notice, they don't look like tabs anymore because they're not. They don't have the tab functionality like they did with JavaScript on. So now we just style them so nothing looks broken and users don't get the wrong idea about what they're seeing. And with the tabs, we simply go through and grab the headings and then create the list with JavaScript as opposed to having it like that in the source. The other plus of doing this is it maintains your document outline so you have the correct heading structures. So the stay on top of Visit Philly is still an H2 with the corresponding H3s under it. The last thing I want to talk about how you're making your site work without JavaScript is the way that we handle our style sheets. We have a screen CSS, and that applies to everything that's screen, all browsers with and without JavaScript. Our print, our IE style sheet for IE 6 and 7, and then we have an enhanced CSS. And our enhanced CSS holds all those styles for making those tabs look into a nice sprite with all the tab styles in it. And we write that link to the page with JavaScript. That way, users with JavaScript get these styles. And that saves us from having to have any of those has.js classes on the body or the HTML tag, which I just don't love so much. So moving on, your site should be keyboard accessible. And this is the Walmart site. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of drop-downs. The site's got a lot going on. There's flyouts everywhere. Everything's happening. And you see them all happen with mouse over. Now, if you look really closely, you can see focus lines happening up there. But nothing's happening when I'm browsing through this with my keyboard. The only reason I know something's moving is the focus, but I hit enter and nothing goes anywhere either because there's no links. It's just set to a hashtag, so I can't get anywhere. This is another site, and it's a hosting website. And you'll see they also have sort of these drop-down menus, and there's hover states on these. And it's spiffy, it's fancy. It's a really nice-looking site. And when I'm tabbing through, you'll see that using a keyboard, I actually can access these drop-downs, which is good. But there's no focus anymore on this. There's no hover states. There's hover states set for these, but not the top ones and not the first ones. So as a keyboard user, I don't know where I am anymore. And I've heard it from a lot of people. You always get that, can you please remove those ugly white borders that are showing up around my links in Firefox? Those are there for a reason. Those focus lines are there for accessibility. So when people are like, oh yeah, we'll throw blur on that and everything that's okay, you're alienating your keyboard users, so now they don't know where they are anymore. On that Visit Philly site that we did, we have these drop-downs there too. And when we first coded them, someone on Twitter was like, they're not keyboard accessible. And we're like, oh, fuck, they're right. We got totally called out on this. Like, we got to fix this. And it was a good learning experience for us to remember that you test for screen readers, you're testing text resize, you're testing all this stuff, and sometimes you forget about the keyboard user. So we went through, and we added all that, and then you can tab through them all. Did it already do that? Oh, no, there it goes. So as you can see, I can get through all these links with the keyboard. And we do this simply by grabbing the mouse over and then just copying it over to the focus. Next up, don't interrupt the workflow. So back to the Carlisle example, one of the things that users could do was favorite floors. And they could add it to their favorites list. And then once they had this list, they could contact a Carlisle representative because all their floors are one-offs. They all customize them for their clients. But a representative would get on the phone, and they could be like, I see what type of floors you're like. This is what we want to help you do. They're not as much of a web-savvy audience for this site. And so the last thing we wanted was for our website to get into the way of the user. So we decided that we wanted users to add something to favorites without having to log in or register right away. And when we did this, we were like, well, how are we going to word this so people know what's happening? So we thought a lot about the message, and we came up with this photo has been temporarily added to your favorites. To permanently save it, log in or register. People do not like when they click to favorites, and to do it, they then have to go away to another page, fill out their email, fill out their address, all this stuff. You're going to lose users that way by making them take that extra step right away before they're sold on your product. So we wanted to do this. We saved it in a cookie. Then they could log in or register later. If they're already registered, from the same page, we let them click right there and log in right there. We give them a quick thank you that automatically goes away, and they can go right back to browsing. We use JavaScript for an awesome reason here, but we're not in their face. We're making sure that they're still having a nice browsing experience on this site. And of course, without JavaScript, they can still have that same functionality. We just do it with page reloads. HappyCog throws on this party at South by Southwest called Kogioki, and it's a karaoke competition. And to compete, you have to get votes on this website, and you have to make this profile, and you log in, and people vote for you to compete. So we have a static login page for users without JavaScript. But then anywhere else in the site, clicking on login pulls this form into the page. You've seen this a lot. If you ever think about why you're doing this to save your users a step. But you're also just doing it by using the jQuery load method, or whatever load of your choice, and you're pulling in the href attribute. And I love this, because it's your foolproof way of making sure when you're loading the attribute from the href that your users can still access that same information without JavaScript. Not to mention, if you ever decide to update your login form, you only have to update it in one place, and then it's going to pull that in. So you don't have to have your hidden divs, hiding that on one page, updating it there, and then updating it in the other places. On that same theme, the next idea is make your forms easy to use. Who likes filling out forms? Filling out forms online may be more annoying than those doctor's forms because you've got errors, you don't know what's required, a whole lot of reasons. You can use JavaScript to help you with this. Using JavaScript validation to make sure that users filled out your required fields, have the right amount of digits in something is great. Now, don't get me wrong. Still do server-side validation. But JavaScript can be your first line of defense in helping your users avoid errors, which is another thing from the WCAG guidelines about making sure your users help them to correct and avoid errors. So this helps your users avoid errors. OK, moving on. The IA6 thing. So I remember the really exciting feeling when I was in school and we found out that we didn't have to support Netscape 4 anymore. It was awesome. Of course, it was after I took my DHTML class and I had to write everything 3 ways. And I was like, damn it. But I was still really excited, IA6 has sort of become that new document layer. It's like, oh, crap, do I really need to code for this again? And everything with HTML5 and CSS3 is really exciting right now. There's some really cool things about it, But the thing is, not all of it is ready for prime time yet. One of the things I've seen a lot recently is people using the placeholder attribute for forms. So an example of some form text is this is our search form. And in it, we have example, the Liberty Bell. And that's to help users to be like, oh, I can search for things like the Liberty Bell. Now, if we took out this text, being that it's an input with a search button right next to it, people will still know it's a search form. People have seen this all throughout the web. Cool. So this is a place where if you use the placeholder and other browsers don't get it, I get it. But let's look at another example. Here I've got a form, and the label says find help in your area, and the button says find help. And that's it. What is my area exactly? Is it a city? Is it a state? Is it a zip code? Country? I don't know. Now, if you're using placeholder for this, and then you view this in a browser that does support placeholder, you now see that it's a city or a zip code. But this information is being hidden from users, and then they're not able to avoid that mistake of not knowing what's in there. And because of the reliability of it, this is why we default back to using values, using JavaScript to clear out that value, and then users without JavaScript can still clear out that information. It just, they have to select it. So next up, don't let your websites look broken, and load your scripts last. And this is one of the, well, for the sites I've been doing, one of the easiest things for us to change. Because we weren't doing that originally at HappyCalc. Our scripts were all at top, everything's neatly in the head. And then we've been reading these great books. Man, High Performance Websites is an awesome book. And you can see, and I'm sure there'll be more about this in this conference, but that everything on the page needs to wait for the JavaScript to load for everything else does. And so instead of making your users watch a blank page, load your content, then apply your scripts. Let your users know something's changed. So back to that favorites example, letting people save stuff to favorites, people still need to remove that from your favorites list, right? So if I click remove from list, also maybe I made a mistake, maybe I didn't want to click. So I've got a yes option and I've got a cancel option. I click cancel. But what if I really do? So I click yes, and what you'll see happens here is it's yellow, and that yellow slowly fades away to white, to not be intrusive on the page, but to let users know, look here, something's changed, something's happening. And then what we did here, just to provide more, or an easy way for if they made a mistake, the user, they can click on that and get back to the page of the floor they just removed. Maybe that's something that's changed is your whole website. So when we redesigned this site, they didn't want any users that were used to the old tourism site to be like, oh no, new site, People don't always like change. So they still gave users a link to go to the archive of the old site. But because SEO was such a really big consideration, we didn't want to stick this code on top before our H1 and before our navigation, so we wanted to have it in the last in the source order. So simply, this is where we take advantage of JavaScript again to help this by taking it and just appending it back up to the top of the page once it loads. On the same way of letting your users know something's changed, let your users know something's happening. Sometimes your websites don't go that fast. And whether that's your cloud server or your internet connection, or just that you wrote that JavaScript really late at night and maybe not as great as it could have been, sometimes people don't know what's going on or if something's broken. We have a lot of slideshows and things loading in the site. So what we wanted to do was have loading GIFs in the background so that people could know that something was changing. So if it did hiccup a little bit, because these are large images, and people love the design of the site, and I love the design of the site, but they're pretty big. And they have great photography, and we didn't want to take that away. We didn't want to be like, you guys want to have your website load faster, you got to make these smaller. Your client probably doesn't want to hear that, most likely. They're like, pretty pictures, yes. And I don't blame them. Pretty pictures. I don't want to think about the JavaScript that's making this run slow or that my internet connection isn't too fast. So we made sure to have this loading going on in the background. So you'll see, as they switch through the pictures, that little animated GIF, it's not just there for decoration. It's telling me, hold on, this is what's supposed to happen. And you'll see how we do this. If we take a look at this, and I'm just going to pop open Firebug right here and hide that image that's on top of it, there's a div that's containing all of this, and that div has that animated GIF on the background. So whenever those photos change, it's just going to show that right through. So that's always there. So we don't need to load in the animated GIF, load in the image. We load in the image on top of that, and it gives the appearance that it's thinking. Next up, share what you got. One of the reasons that we love to use JavaScript as solutions for sort of animation and things like that is with Flash, since it's proprietary, people don't know how you got it done. Part of the thing about web standards is sharing your knowledge, learning from others, letting them see your source code. You can look in and learn so much from seeing how people did things. I can look at probably anyone in this room. I can look at the JavaScript you wrote and be like, holy crap, that's awesome. And it's really awesome that it's a community where you're opening it up and teaching people just by having your work up on the web. So For that Carlisle site, one of their, the main driving goals of this redesign was they were going to have a browse of floors page. And the floor was like it was going to be this mechanism that people can switch through photos, and they can apply filters, and the photo switches here, and then we've got a list of filters on the end. And when we originally looked at this page description diagram, we thought, oh, this might be something we want to use Flash for. There's whooshing and animation, and things are going to animate in and go away. But because we were like, well, we want people to know how we did this, let's try to do it in JavaScript. So we did it in JavaScript. And the client was really pleased, and we still have animations, and there's still fades. I think it'll work a little bit faster if you're throwing it on your web and not up here on the projector. But it was fun, and it was fun to be like, we can do this. We can still make things look really pretty and nice and animated and use JavaScript. So the other thing about the whole sharing what you got, and I'm going to say this, but it's my controversial slide, is beware of minification. And minifying your CSS in JavaScript is like really hot these days. Again, it's page load. Yeah, awesome, fast websites. But if someone's popping open a minified JavaScript, I can't read that. I don't know what you did. Your CSS, I can't read that, and I'm not going to know how to unminify it if I'm starting out on the web and trying to learn how to do things. And there's different use cases. For us, most of the sites we do, our JavaScript and CSS, they're not massive files. So the little bit of file space or file size that we save by minifying doesn't outweigh the fact that we want users to be able to see what we're doing and to critique and to learn. Don't kill your users with gratuitous animation. Again, just because you can animate something doesn't mean you should. Here's an example of a site I see every day. Why do they need to animate in my top navigation up there? Why is Google hiding to me that I can access Gmail? I don't know. I don't know what that animation gained me. There's nothing that I'm like, oh. No, one time I was like, well, where is it? Oh, there it is. Cool, magic. On a more serious note, and again, going back to guidelines, the WCAG tells us that web pages can't contain any more than flashes 3 times in 1 second period. And I don't know if most of you recall back in 2008 when there was an attack on an epilepsy forum, support forum, and people reported seizures, and that sucks. Like, talk about giving JavaScript a bad name because a bunch of assholes want to exploit something like this. And that's the sort of stuff that you want to avoid. Lastly, declare yourself an application. And this is something that is like a whole day that can be done, talked about. And this is about WayAria. And WayAria allows web pages to declare themselves as applications rather than static documents. So it does this by adding role and property and state information to your web apps. For example, you can let screen readers know that they're looking at a list of navigation links. Here's an example of what some WayAria really simple implementation looks like. You'll see role equals checkbox, aria checked equals true. It provides us developers ways to help provide accessibility. JavaScript accessibility is really tough. It's been a really hard thing. And so they've been making these new guidelines that they hope to roll out with HTML5, which is going to be a huge, awesome, like, hell yeah, this is really good for JavaScript apps and accessibility. And they built this off of things from XHTML, like the role attribute in the XHTML2 spec. And that's the idea that we're adding machine-readable semantic information about the purpose of the element on the screen. So people don't have to rely on markup anymore. You're actually able to define what your elements are. What's really awesome is that there's a bunch of JavaScript libraries that are already implementing this for us. And I apologize if any of this is out of date. I grabbed those top from codetalks.org, but some of the stuff Dojo's doing is really, really freaking cool. And the way that people are thinking about this, and I love that. So thank you, everyone that is already implementing this, because that's awesome. If you haven't gotten to read up on any of this, I really recommend that video. It's from Todd Klutz, and it's a 45-minute video online. Gives a really great overview of WayAria. So that's it. Thanks. I am Jenn Lukas, and you can find me on the Twitter as well as some other internets.